You know, the saying always goes that you can't win your league at the draft, but you can lose it. And having a great start to your draft to build the foundation of your team is a critical first step in winning a championship. So today, I'm going to run through the ideal first 3 picks for every team in a generic 12-team league to make sure that no matter where you pick, you have the best start possible. And I'll even make sure to include some fallback options when your draft inevitably does not go according to plan. I do have timestamps for this video so you can skip ahead to whatever picks you have in your leagues. And if this video helped you out, we would greatly appreciate a like and subscribe on this fantasy channel for more fantasy content throughout the entire season. So at the 1.01, the decision for me is pretty simple. It's Ja'Marr Chase, the 2024 Triple Crown winner who is in the exact same situation as he was in last year, so theoretically, we should be expecting similar production. Chase himself is arguably the best receiver in the league. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. T. Higgins doesn't hurt Ja'Marr Chase at all. In fact, last year, Chase's fantasy points per game average was 3 points better with T. Higgins on the field than without T. Higgins. And the Bengals defense is absolutely atrocious, so they're going to be in some high-scoring shootout games, even against worse competition, because their defense is just that bad. Crazy enough, Ja'Marr Chase has only played 2 full seasons where either he or Joe Burrow were healthy all year. It was 2021 as a rookie, and then, of course, last year. Obviously, he was far and away the wide receiver 1 in 2024, and in 2021, as a rookie, was the fantasy wide receiver 5. So as long as Chase and Burrow are healthy, Chase's floor looks like he's a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy with the ultimate upside to be a league-dominating force that you never want to play against. So drafting him at the 1.01 feels super easy this year. Now, attacking the 2-3 turn obviously depends greatly on the other 22 picks that were made between the 101 and the 212, but if we're talking ideal picks to make at this turn, to me, that means double tapping the running back position here, and the way that I've structured this video here, that means Bucky Irving and Kyren Williams as the ideal 2 running backs to come back at the 2-3 turn. To me, these 2 are the last of who should be surefire RB1s that have the weekly volume and touchdown upside in good offenses. If they just do what they did last year, you are getting the RB7 and the RB13 to pair with the potential and perhaps probable fantasy wide receiver 1. Taking 2 running backs here also sets you up well to then avoid drafting any dead zone running backs or late round guys who could pan out or just be complete busts, and instead then attack Joe Burrow in the 4th round for the stack. Other upside wide receivers and tight ends like Jamison Williams, Ted McMillan, Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall, Emeka Ibuka, Tucker Kraft, or Tyler Warren at the tight end position. You can do all of that later because your running backs are already set early. Even if you wanted to draft a James Conner or a Chuba Hubbard, or maybe if Travion Henderson is there at the 4-5 turn, you can draft one of them too and be pretty much done at running back for the entire draft, and then go all upside for wide receivers, all upside for tight ends for the rest of the draft, maybe take one of your handcuffs for security, but that's pretty much it, and that's the game plan for the 101. Some alternative options for the 2-3 turn, if you're not able to take Bucky or Kyren, would be Chase Brown, who is actually more in line with ADP at the 212 right now. Bucky is most likely going to get taken a couple picks before you. If Trey McBride is there, I wouldn't be opposed in locking down your tight end and your RB1 at the 2-3 turn. Then you'd have to take a running back at the 4-5 turn probably, but you would have to a positional advantage at the tight end position. If your draft is weird and you get London or AJ Brown to fall to you, then of course, take them because that's pretty extreme value on either. And if they fall, that means your league went super RB heavy, so you're just taking the value and zigging while others are zagging. But ideally, the play here is to grab 2 out of Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Bucky Irving, Kyren Williams, and Chase Brown. If you draft 2 of those guys to pair with Ja'Marr Chase, I consider that a massive win from the 1.01. Now at the 1.02, Ja'Marr Chase is already gone, so we're going to start with the second best player in fantasy this year and the 2025 RB1, Bijan Robinson. In terms of high ceiling upside combined with ultimate floor safety, Bijan Robinson is the complete package. He is one of the few bell cow running backs left in the league with 365 touches last year, which is over 300 carries and over 60 receptions. He totaled 1,900 total yards, 15 total touchdowns, was one of 3 running backs to average over 20 PPR points per game last year, and from week 6 on, scored 20 fantasy points in 10 of the final 12 games, including 2 24-point performances in week 16 and 17 to help you win a championship, and Those were the games with Michael Penix at quarterback. He's not as flashy as the other backs. He's not going to house 60 and 70-yard runs every single game like Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon Barkley seem to do, but he's game script proof. He's going to catch a lot of passes. He's extremely efficient on every single touch, and he's just going to get the ball a lot every single week. Don't overthink it. Bijan Robinson at the 1.02. Now, addressing the 2-3 turn from the 2 spot is also a bit difficult to predict, kind of like the 1.01 was, because you're still on the turn. But taking Bijan first sets you up nicely for a hero running back build where you can attack the other positions for strength and then stream your RB2 spot with later round guys. So at the 2.11, I like hoping for Trey McBride to lock down your tight end spot and having a positional advantage at RB1 and tight end over nearly everybody else in your league. And then at the 3.02, I'm looking at wide receiver with either Jackson Smith-Njigba or T. Higgins, especially if you think that you can get Joe Burrow in the 4th for the Burrow-Higgins stack to counter the Jamar Chase manager at 1.01, then I like taking the shot on T. Higgins there too, or whichever one suits your fancy. JSN is probably going to see more targets and catch more receptions, plus probably going to stay healthier all year than T. Higgins, so ultimately, that decision rests on you and your risk-reward tolerance, but one of those 2 wide receivers would be my pick of the 3.02. The alternate option, depending on how your draft goes, is maybe getting a Ladd McConkey or an A.J. Brown at the 2.11 for your wide receiver, and then going running back at the 3.02 if Kyron, Chase Brown, or even James Cook are there. That start puts you in line with the 101 start with 2 running backs and 1 wide receiver out of the first 3 rounds, where you would then go a little bit wide receiver heavier for the next few rounds, grab an upside tight end at some point before the 10th, grab your quarterback whenever. Either direction works for me. It's just down to how your league mates draft, and then you act accordingly. 1.03 now, assuming Chase and Bijan are off the board. For me, I would go with my RB2 in Saquon Barkley because the formula that worked last year is still the same formula for 2025 for Saquon Barkley. Saquon himself, fantastic. The Eagles' O-line, fantastic. The offense, fantastic. Pretty simple. I mean, I will say it is difficult for running backs to repeat in back-to-back years as the RB1, but even if Saquon is the RB3 with 19 PPR points per game, which is 3 points per game worse than last year, I don't think you're mad at that. And Saquon is a different breed of running back too. If anybody's going to be able to repeat, it's a player like him. In 2006, at age 27, same age as Saquon Barkley last year, LaDainian Tomlinson had his insane 2,300-yard and 31 touchdown season. Then in 2007, at age 28, LT did regress, but he still put up almost 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns. Priest Holmes had 3 straight incredible seasons at age 27, 28, and 29 in Kansas City. Marshall Faulk, 2,200 yards and 26 touchdowns at age 27, 2,100 yards and 21 touchdowns at age 28. Derrick Henry has been an absolute animal for years, and he's in his 30s now. The age just may not matter for Saquon Barkley because he's just a different kind of dude, and his touch curse and his Madden curse may not mean anything this year, and he can still be a top 3 fantasy running back again, if not even the RB1 in back-to-back years. Now, similar to the 1.02 build, starting your draft with Saquon at 103 invites a hero running back build, and the ADP makes sense to double tap wide receiver at the 2-3 turn 2. This is where ideally you pull a Ladd McConkey at the 210 and then a T. Higgins or a Jackson Smith-Njigba at the 3.03. Obviously, if Drake London is there at the 210, I'd much rather have him than Ladd McConkey, but I'm very happy with a core of Saquon, Ladd, T. Higgins at my 103 start. After that, like I said earlier, if you take T. Higgins, you could try to get Burrow in the 4th for the stack. Otherwise, a later round quarterback, a later round tight end. Then guys like Chuba, James Conner, Travion Henderson in the 4th and 5th, maybe a Tony Pollard in the 6th, then a couple high upside wide receivers in the mid rounds, like some of the rookies this year, Jameson Williams, Rome Odunze, guys like that you're happy with as flex options, but then have the upside to outproduce Ladd or T. Higgins if the season does go extremely well for them. This video is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy season is in full swing, and we here at 4for4 are all over it. We've got drafts firing up, leagues are reuniting, and yes, some early group chat smack talk has already started. This year on 4for4, we are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, I've always been a fan of how intuitive the Yahoo platform is. From draft day to waiver claims, it just works the way you want it to. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's just one team standing. With the season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you are more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/tmap. That's yahoofantasy.com/TMAP. Moving on, I'm going to combine the 104 and 105 because I think the strategy is pretty much identical. The decisions just come down to your personal player preferences and the overall board. But at both picks here, I would be looking at the wide receiver position with either CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson, both of whom I think are fantastic picks in the top 5 who have shown elite fantasy production over the past few years. I honestly don't really see a difference between the two. Lamb has a better quarterback, but Kevin O'Connell has shown that it doesn't matter who his quarterback is. He's going to make it work, and Justin Jefferson is a huge part of why any quarterback that throws for Minnesota is going to succeed. Both receivers also have strong number 2 options behind them that I think, kind of like T. Higgins to Jamar Chase, only benefits the alpha because there's less defensive attention on them than without having good wide receiver 2s across from them. Jordan Addison is suspended for 3 games, so Jefferson might start off really hot without him, but Pickens is also new to this offense and new to acclimating with Dak Prescott, may also start slow, fully integrating to the team, so CeeDee Lamb could also be great early as well. I mean, there really isn't a difference to me between the two guys. Just take whoever you like and be happy with a top 3 fantasy wide receiver in the first round. What makes me take a receiver here over Jahmyr Gibbs is how the ADP is shaking out for the second round specifically, but also then the possibilities of how your draft shakes out in the third round. With the late first and early second being predominantly wide receiver heavy in most leagues, that means you can grab a Jonathan Taylor, a Josh Jacobs, a Bucky Irving, even a Chase Brown in the second round to pair with Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. So you're getting a top 3 fantasy wide receiver and a top 10 fantasy running back to start, and that allows you to have a lot of flexibility with how you attack the rest of your draft. In the third round, you have many different ways to go. You can look for players falling in ADP, like a Kyren Williams, like a Jackson Smith-Njigba, a T. Higgins. Maybe you get Bucky or JT in the second, then you get Chase Brown in the third round. That would be absolutely incredible. James Cook comes into play too if you wanted to emulate the 101 build with a wide receiver running back start. Tyreek Hill is a great wide receiver too with insane upside if he returns to his production in 2002 or 2023 with a healthy Tua. Mike Evans, also a good pick, or take some value at tight end and draft George Kittle as a tight end 3 off the board. It is so much easier to make that pick when the opportunity cost is lower with George Kittle in the third versus Bowers or McBride in the second, and you already have an elite wide receiver and a stud running back to then go stud tight end early. I'll also add, if you are at one of those picks and neither CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson are there, that means you got to steal on either Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley, and you can just follow the draft process I laid out already with one of them in the more middle of the first. Now, similarly to the 104 and the 105, I also want to package the 106 and the 107 together because they're both running backs with very similar ideal builds. It's Jahmyr Gibbs and Derrick Henry. I don't really think I need to lay out all the reasons why you should be looking to draft either running back in the mid-first. Gibbs may not even be there at this point. ADP says he's probably more of a top 5 pick, in which case you just draft CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson and you follow that build that I just laid out at the 106. But if Gibbs is here at the 106, that's an easy selection for me for the sheer upside of a year 3 Jahmyr Gibbs in a new Lions offensive system, an older David Montgomery coming off of an injured end of season. Then for Derrick Henry, this is actually a few spots above his ADP, but when I look at the other second half of the first round options with all the wide receivers there, Ashton Genty, Devon Achane, Brock Bowers, I don't trust all of them as much as I trust Derrick Henry. He's the new engine of this Ravens offense. He's coming off a season that pretty much mirrored Saquon Barkley's with nearly 2,000 rushing yards and 18 total touchdowns. I don't care if it's half PPR, if it's full PPR, that Derrick Henry doesn't really catch a lot of passes. I'm taking Derrick Henry in the mid first because he's just that good. The other reason to go running back here in the mid first are the ADP options for you in the mid second. You're potentially getting a shot on a Drake London or an AJ Brown as your wide receiver 1, both fantastic top 10 fantasy wide receivers with top 5 production if the season really breaks their way. There's also the outside shots that a Brian Thomas Jr. or a Nico Collins fall to you if your league really values running back, if they end up drafting one of the two tight ends before you, if they even draft quarterbacks ahead of you. So, no matter how crazy your league ends up being, you're probably set up in a very good spot in the mid-second to take some value that's coming towards you and see where your draft goes. I mean, hey, maybe Brock Bowers is there for you later and you can just take a wide receiver 1 out of your tight end spot in the mid-second and then go on from there. Then in the third round at this spot, the ADP also works well to continue stacking wide receiver and flesh out this hero running back build. You should have the options of a Tyreek Hill, a Mike Evans, a Garrett Wilson in the mid-third, maybe even a T. Higgins if he slides a couple of picks. Now, I'm not the biggest Garrett Wilson fan, but he does offer top 12 upside with the volume he'll receive as the only good receiver to throw to in New York this year. The other three all have top 12 upside on better offenses with good target volume and target quality. I would also throw out George Kittle as an option in the third round too, as a value there if you end up passing on Brock Bowers and Trey McBride in the second. I'll also end with this is the first set of picks where I would consider a quarterback early in the mid-third with Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. I don't think I would actually take a quarterback this early, and the odds are that they might not even be there based on ADP. Those guys are like 2-3 turn kind of guys, but if they are available, they're an option that I may not personally take. I would be looking at Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans personally, but there is the potential option that if you wanted to go quarterback early and just solidify that top position, you could do that here in the mid-third. There's just a lot of ways to go in the second and third rounds, but your foundation of your roster is built around the stability and massive ceiling of difference-making RB1s in Jahmyr Gibbs and Derrick Henry in this mid-first. Now, the 108 is where things start to really open up. ADP can be all over the place, and you have maybe 5 or 6 guys that actually make sense to draft here. But for me, listen, I understand if you can't draft him anymore because he's hurt you one too many times. But my ideal start at the 1.08 this year is Christian McCaffrey. The fact remains that when healthy, he has by far the best chance to be the fantasy RB1, and by a fair margin too. There's nothing I can say to convince people that won't draft Christian McCaffrey anymore to now draft Christian McCaffrey. He is 100% a player that you're either in on or you're out. But I have no concerns about his age. I have no concerns about the 49ers offense. They honestly might need him more than ever because of the loss of Deebo Samuel, the current injuries to every wide receiver they have pretty much, and every backup running back they seemingly have as well. And all of the defensive losses in the offseason will probably make them have to throw and score more to win games. And they also have quite literally the easiest schedule in the entire NFL. Christian McCaffrey is going to still have a huge role this year and be a massive producer for fantasy if he stays healthy. And at the 1.08, I am willing to make that bet. I will say ADP-wise, if you don't want to draft Christian McCaffrey, it's also a fair shot that you get Derrick Henry there. So if you don't want to draft CMC and Derrick Henry is still on the board, then just take Derrick Henry. But if you are going with Christian McCaffrey, I think the most logical second round pick to make is Josh Jacobs at the 2.05, which depending on your platform is either right in line with ADP or just slightly ahead, so you should be okay here. The reason why you pair Christian McCaffrey with Josh Jacobs and go with a double hero running back build is to pretty much insulate yourself in case Christian McCaffrey gets hurt. And if he does, you at least have another top 10 running back behind him that slides into your RB1 spot. You're going to have to do some work to fill in your RB2 or your flex spot if Christian McCaffrey does go down, but at least you won't feel completely helpless at running back if you also have Josh Jacobs there. But as valuable as Josh Jacobs is to your team for insulation, he is also valuable for your team's ultimate ceiling, because if Christian McCaffrey plays 15 or more games and is Christian McCaffrey again, averaging like 22 plus PPR points per game, then Josh Jacobs as your RB2 is going to be insane for the 17, 18, 19 points per game he's probably going to give you. There probably won't be another team in your league with the raw power at running back to compete with you at that position if Christian McCaffrey is healthy all year. I also don't mind drafting Jonathan Taylor here if Josh Jacobs is gone. It does get a little bit dicier with JT because he has his own injury issues. So if you have 2 injury-prone running backs as your core, that feels like a tightrope every single week that I probably just don't really want to walk. Devon Achane would be a great option too if he's there. ADP says he won't be, but if he is, I would take Achane over Josh Jacobs personally, but I'm also very happy drafting Josh Jacobs in the mid-second. Then in the third round, you're looking for your wide receiver 1. I do not want to advise a onesie position here, even if Kittle is there and it does look like a great pick, or if any of the elite quarterbacks are there and look like great picks, I wouldn't do it. I think drafting a onesie in the third after starting with 2 running backs, one of them especially being Christian McCaffrey, just really limits your options on wide receivers later. I think it's easier to find a late round quarterback or a late round tight end that can boom more than it is late round wide receivers that could boom. So I would wait on quarterback and tight end, draft a Tucker Kraft or a Tyler Warren later, and then a Baker Mayfield, Drake May, Dak Prescott later to address the onesie position. So if we're looking at wide receiver in the mid to late third, the answers are the same that I gave for the Jahmyr Gibbs and Derrick Henry builds. It just depends on who's there and where you are in your draft. T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, that's actually the order that I would prefer them as well. Actually, out of that entire group, Mike Evans might make the most sense. He's the guy that's probably going to be there most likely in terms of ADP. He might be the safest in terms of clear wide receiver 1 role and targets on his team, plus the quarterback talent, plus the extended history of elite production. The other positive of drafting Mike Evans could then be drafting Baker Mayfield later for the stack. His ADP actually lines up well to snag him in the 6th. So if you get Evans in the 3rd, you get Devontae Adams or DK Metcalf in the 4th, you get a Ted McMillan, a George Pickens, a Jameson Williams, a Calvin Ridley in the 5th, Baker in the 6th, Warren or Kraft in the 8th or 9th. I mean, that's a pretty good roster with an elite running back duo, strong wide receiver production, a top 10 quarterback, maybe a top 7-ish tight end. 1.08 honestly is kind of sounding like the play here, starting with Christian McCaffrey. Now picks 109 through the 112 are really, really fun because it becomes a free-for-all with essentially 8 to 10 very viable picks that depend greatly upon what the players either before you or after you do on this 1-2 turn. The strength of this area, as I already mentioned, is definitely wide receivers. And when I find myself drafting back here, I'm usually double stacking wide receivers because that's kind of where the value lies. So starting with any 2 of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., I'll even throw in a Drake London and an A.J. Brown here as options too. That start is kind of insane for the target volume you're going to receive every single week. That gives your team not only a high ceiling, but also a really high floor. If you do start with 2 wide receivers, the plan for the rest of the draft then is, of course, running backs and then high ceiling wide receivers, not floor wide receivers. Let me explain. Obviously, you're going to need running backs, and they do dry up pretty quickly once you get to the 5th and 6th rounds. And since you're on the turn, you really can't play the ADP game and hope that some running backs might fall back to you because they just might not, because you have 20 plus picks between your picks after the turn. So I would advise looking for an Omarion Hampton or a James Cook in the 3rd round, then a Breece Hall or a Kenneth Walker in the 4th round. You may not like these running backs, and they obviously come with some warts on them, but that's the kind of game you sign up for when you start with 2 wide receivers at the 1-2 turn. You're hoping that James Cook can mostly repeat what he did last year, a very solid volume back on a very good offense with a lot of touchdown opportunity. Omarion Hampton is, of course, the elite rookie prospect with his main competition currently sidelined right now, and there's no indication that Najee Harris is even close to playing at this point. Breece is in a committee, yes, but he's at least the 1A in that committee and should see a healthy dose of rushing and receiving volume. Same goes for Kenneth Walker, who might be in more of a committee this year with Zach Charbonnet, who also has injury concerns too that Breece Hall doesn't really have. But when healthy last year, Kenneth Walker was averaging 16 PPR points per game. You could also shoot the shot on a very ascending Travion Henderson. I don't think that he's a bad pick in the 4th round for some super high upside with the New England Patriots. But when you bypass all of the top 15 running backs, essentially, you have to shoot for upside and kind of hope for the best in terms of their ultimate situation and for health. I think you have to leave the 3-4 turn with someone at the running back position. Otherwise, you're even more desperate at the 5-6 turn for guys like RJ Harvey, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, or David Montgomery type of running back. Grabbing 2 of them could work too, but I would rather them be my RB2 or 3 with someone at the 3-4 turn than those guys be my RB1 and 2. If you can even out your roster by round 6 with 2 stud wide receivers and then 3 to 4 decent running backs, then you can draft how you want after that. Late round quarterbacks, late round tight ends, more running back depth, and of course, the high ceiling wide receivers, not floor wide receivers. That's because if this is your standard start 2 wide receiver and 1 flex league, you only can start 3 wide receivers at most. 2 of those spots are being taken up by your elite top 8 guys. So to even have a chance to have someone start over them or weekly in your flex spot, you need them to have a ceiling, not a floor. So I'm bypassing all of the floor options in the later rounds, like Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Khalil Shakir, Chris Godwin, Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, guys like that. And I'm targeting these super high upside guys. Travis Hunter, Ricky Pearsall, Rome Odunze, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Emeka Ibuka, Keon Coleman, Marvin Mims, Cedric Tillman. Those are my mid to late round wide receiver targets when I start with 2 wide receivers in rounds 1 and 2. The other possible combo in the late first is running back and wide receiver, where you grab one of the elite wide receivers and then you also get Derrick Henry if he's there, Ashton Genty, or Devon Achane as really your only running back options at this point. This does allow you a lot more flexibility later in your drafts, and I do prefer this more if you are at the 11 or 12 spots, specifically because you're way at the mercy of the turn than you are at the 9 and 10 spot. So if you start running back wide receiver or wide receiver running back at the 1-2 turn, you can then take advantage of any values that fall at the 3-4 turn at any position. If George Kittle's there, great, draft him. If Mike Evans is there, great, draft him. If James Cook or Amari Hampton are there, great, draft them. If an elite quarterback is there, that is even an option too. Then the rest of the draft just kind of flows on from there. You're filling out your wide receiver depth, you're filling out your running back depth, whoever your quarterback is, whoever your tight end is, but it all stems from going wide receiver, running back, or running back, wide receiver at that 1-2 turn that allows you to have that kind of flexibility. Finally, drafting in the late first also opens up Brock Bowers as a great pick in this range, and depending on the position that you pair him with, either running back or wide receiver, then decides your ultimate path. You essentially need to consider Brock Bowers as your wide receiver 1 because he's going to produce as a wide receiver 1. Last year, in just normal PPR leagues, he would have scored as the wide receiver 9 overall, and his situation probably got better for 2025 with a better offensive system and a better quarterback that he hopefully can score more than 5 touchdowns this year and just be better than wide receiver 9 that he was last year. So if you treat Brock Bowers as your wide receiver 1, if you pair him with another wide receiver, then you're following the wide receiver start that I already outlined, with the one caveat being that it is more okay to draft a floor wide receiver later to give you solid production in your wide receiver 2 spot or your flex, because Bowers is in your tight end slot just acting as your wide receiver 1. If you pair him with a running back, you can follow the running back wide receiver start that I outlined too, though with maybe a tad more emphasis on wide receiver at the 3-4 turn if the value makes sense, because you still need to start 2 of them that you didn't start out drafting in the 1-2 turn, because again, Bowers is in your tight end slot acting as a wide receiver. But that's pretty much it. That is the ideal start for the first 3 or 4 rounds at every single draft slot in a normal 12-man league. If you enjoyed this video and you found it very helpful, we would appreciate if you subscribe to this channel and you also like the video so it can spread to more people, just hopefully not spread to your league mates. And if you are interested in who some of my personal favorite players are to draft this year, my guys, if you will, then you can check out that video right up here.